Hi. Today we'll be demonstrating how ImpulseSync can be used to migrate content from tens of thousands of sources into any ImpulseSync destination. In this case, we'll be migrating 4 separate source systems to a single Contentstack destination. Now, things like replatforming, migrating, integrating, or generally syncing content may be accomplished with an integration script or other such solutions, but integration scripts can be costly, prone to failure, or only useful for a very specific use case, not allowing for multiple sources and destinations to be used. Unlike ImpulseSync, which is a platform built to handle billions of content from many sources to many destinations. Today we have 3 separate demos to show, which will line up to these 3 separate pipelines viewed on the screen. This first pipeline we see, named Drupal 7, will move content from, Drupal 7 to Contentstack. Now let's go ahead and start running this. Now if we take a look at this pipeline, what we'll see is we'll be migrating an article along with the author and asset that it references. If we take a look at the article content type, we'll see many different fields, some of these fields which will be migrated over to the article content type at our destination. We'll be migrating it specifically to this NWC article content type here. In addition, like we said, we'll be migrating an author as an author content and an image as well, which our article will be referencing. Now we can go ahead and take a look at the configuration for these jobs. And what we'll see first, if we start with our assets, is that the assets job is fairly straightforward, where we have our selected source endpoint to be Drupal 7 with its configuration and a query to pick up the asset we're looking for, as well as our Contentstack destination endpoint configured to configure syncing this asset over to the destination. We have no manipulators for this job, and we'll also notice that we have no mapping for this job either, as it's fairly straightforward and we just want to migrate the assets itself. The next job to look at would be for the author content, and if we take a look at it, we will see again we have our source Drupal 7 endpoint and our destination Contentstack endpoint. No manipulators are being used for this job. However, we do have a simple mapping to map our Drupal 7 author content to our Contentstack author content. And if we take a look at that mapping, we'll see here our destination content type is author, along with 2 small field mappings to map our field mail to email and our title to title, as along with what their field type is. The final job configuration to review is for the article content type itself. Now if we take a look, we'll again see we have our source endpoint with its configuration, as well as our destination endpoint to Contentstack. We have no manipulators, but we'll see a slightly larger field mapping for this job, where if we take a look at that, we'll see our destination content type is our NWC article with multiple fields mapped from our source Drupal to what they're going to be at our destination Contentstack. Not only their field name, but also their field type, such as our WYSIWYG or relationship, file, or Boolean. Now, we can go ahead and take a look at the content that we have migrated over with this pipeline. We'll start with our assets, and if we take a look, we can see here we now have that asset migrated, which was this image, and we can now see that image migrated here. Additionally, we can view our content, and we will see our author content migrated over here. We can see our author with the name Tim Shreyek, or again, this is our name here. And finally, our article content. And if we take a look at our article content specifically, we'll see those fields that we have mapped. We have our title and our body, as well as the date field and such. Additionally, we can see that that author relationship has been migrated over from our Drupal 7 source to our Contentstack destination, as well as the reference to the media image for this article. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next pipeline. Now, this next pipeline will demonstrate how ImpulseSync can be used to migrate multiple source systems to the same destination content type, using some field aligning and field locking to migrate the same content between the two systems over to the same content type. So let's go ahead and start running this pipeline and view what jobs are inside of it. What we'll see here is we have first our Drupal 9 jobs, where we're going to migrate a few assets. We're going to migrate a content type called buzzworthy brands, as well as we're actually going to do a special migration for Drupal, where we take the Drupal user and migrate it as a content called author at our Contentstack destination. Once those three jobs run, the next job will run, which is Drupal 9 post content, which will be migrated to a content type article at the Contentstack destination. And finally, when that job's finished, we will run a job to migrate headline content from our Strappy source to our Contentstack destination. And we will use some field aligning to align the content from Strappy to the content we just migrated from Drupal 9. So let's go ahead and take a look at our systems real quick, where we'll see we have our buzzworthy brands content type to migrate over, as well as our post content type. We have our people content, as well as what the buzzworthy brands and post content type will look like. Now at Strappy, we again have that headline content type, which will be migrated over, and we have some different headlines which will line up to our posts that we're migrating from our Drupal 9. At our destination, we will see that we have our article content. If we search for it, we have our Winsight article content here, which our post or headline will be migrated into, as well as our brands to watch, which will be our buzzworthy brands at the source migrated to this brands to watch at the destination. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the configuration for these jobs. And let's start with our assets job. Similar to the Drupal 7 assets job, this job doesn't have too immense amount of configuration, where we have our source endpoint and our destination endpoint. Now what this job will have are folder manipulators. And what these folder manipulators are going to do is they will take what the folder is at our source, Drupal 9, and convert it to a different folder at our destination, Contentstack. So what we can see is, rather than our folder path being this long 6-folder nested folder path, we're actually going to make it just a single folder called background. So with all those manipulators, there's no mapper for this job because we just want to migrate the assets and change what their folder that they live under is. Now the second job is going to be migrating this buzzworthy brands content. And as we look at the configuration, we'll see we have our Drupal 9 source endpoint. We have our Contentstack destination endpoint. We also have a few manipulators here for this job. Now, these manipulators are configured to manipulate the content from our Drupal 9 source and format it appropriately for our Contentstack destination. But be aware that any of these manipulators that you see can be configured for any job in ImpulseSync, no matter what the source is or what the destination is. For now, let's go ahead and first take a look at our regex manipulators. And here what we'll see is we're actually converting a value, text value, yes or no, and replacing it with either true or false. Because at our Drupal 9 source, we have a text field, and at our Contentstack destination, we have a Boolean field. So we need to convert that text field to an appropriate Boolean value. Here we can see we're converting no to false or yes to true. Now our other manipulator is a liquid field manipulator, which shows how you can use a little bit of low code to manipulate values for much more complex cases, such as using a liquid template to build an if-else set of statements where we're converting the valid value from our Drupal source to a valid value at our Contentstack destination, such as converting FL to Florida or LA to Louisiana. Now we can take a look at the mapping for this job as well. And what we'll see is we have our destination content type, brands to watch, and our field mapping, which has a number of fields and field types, such as float and boolean and date time, and so on and so forth, to migrate and map these contents from our Drupal 9 source to our Contentstack destination. Now the next job to look at is our Drupal user to our Contentstack author content type. And what we'll see here is we have again our source configuration where we're using a special ImpulseSync keyword to pick up the Drupal users from our Drupal source system, as well as a query to filter down to the specific users we want to pick up and migrate. We have our destination endpoint as usual, no manipulators. And what we'll see is we have a mapping for this job where we're going to the destination content type author, and that's what it will be migrated as, with the field mappings from display name to title, mail to email, or name to username. Finally, we have our last Drupal 9 source job. And if we look at its configuration, what we're going to see is we're going from the post content type to an article destination content type. We'll see we have our source endpoint, our destination endpoint. We don't have any manipulators for this job, but we do have a mapping. And in this mapping, we can see our content type is set for our Winsight article content type with some different fields that we want to be migrated over and mapped. We have our body fields, our field deck, or field opinion all mapped to what their destination field is, as well as its field type. Now, one thing to highlight here is this source UID field to the article author field type. It is a relationship, and this is where we're relating that Drupal user that we migrated as an author to the destination. And we're going to relate that author that user we migrated to this article that we are migrating as well. And we'll see that using our destination content stack, we have some special properties to fully migrate this relationship over. Finally, for this pipeline, we have our Strappy headlines job. And what that's going to show is how we're migrating our Strappy content and using our field aligner to update the content that we've previously migrated from as a post from Drupal 9. And we're going to migrate the Strappy headlines and update specific posts based on our field aligning. So if we take a look at the configuration for this job, we have our Strappy source endpoint this time, and we still have our destination content stack endpoint. No special manipulators for this job. Instead, we have some specific mapping configuration. So looking at this mapping, we'll see that we have that same destination content type, Winsight article, and some field mapping to map from our Strappy source content type to our content stack destination content type. Additionally, because we want some of these contents to actually match the contents that are already been migrated and update them, we're going to use our field aligning technology. And what this can do is it takes one-to-many field names and can match the value from those fields to compare if the content needs to be updated. In this case, we'll see that our Strappy source field is name and our content stack destination field is title. So if the source Strappy name field, if its value matches what the destination title field value is, this content will be aligned and it will be updated from our Strappy source. Now, we don't want all of our fields being updated in this case, And so we can use our field locking, where we can lock a destination field or many fields. In this case, we're going to lock the deck field, so that way the destination deck value is what will be kept and will not be overwritten when we run this job from Strapi to Contentstack. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our destination content that we've migrated over. And what we'll see is a number of different contents, as well as assets. Here we can first see that we have that background folder and not our entire folder path. We have just the single folder with some of the assets that we migrated over. Additionally, under our content, what we'll see is we have a new author, this Site Support, which is actually a Drupal user that has been migrated over as the author content. We have these brands to watch, which were the buzzworthy brands, and we can see this one and compare it to our destination. There it is. And what we can see here is we have our title and average sales, description, and such as appropriate. We'll also find that we have those posts migrated as articles as well. And we can see here, if we take a look at one of these articles, we have our 27 BP Florida article post at our source, and we can see that article migrated over to our destination Contentstack, here with its title and its body and deck, as well as the article author. So this is a relationship created that from the Drupal user relationship to now the Contentstack author content. Additionally, what we'll see is that some of these articles are version 1, while others are version 2. This is because the version 2 articles have been updated based on Strapi content values. So if we take a look again at this article that we have, we'll actually see that the body has an intro, a little bit of text up here that says updated to show Strapi changes. Additionally, we'll notice that our deck has nothing relevant to Strapi here. And we can see if we take a look at our Strapi version of this content, we'll see that the deck field value does have Strapi at our Strapi source, but it doesn't in our Contentstack destination because we've used our field locking and aligning to match up the Strapi content to this migrated content from Drupal, but use the field locking to not update all of the fields at once. Now let's go ahead and look at our final pipeline, which will showcase using GraphQL as a source to our Contentstack destination. So we'll go ahead and start running this final pipeline and view the jobs inside of it. And we'll notice that we have a single job with GraphQL where we'll be migrating some restaurant content. Now, in this case, our source is a WordPress system with GraphQL enabled, where we're going to be migrating these restaurant contents. So we have a few different little restaurant contents created, and we'll see that it has things like a title, as well as some special custom fields that will all be migrated over to our Contentstack destination. We'll actually view the content type over here as called restaurant, and we'll see it has some fields for migrating into. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the configuration for this final job. We'll take a look at it and see that we have our source endpoint to be a GraphQL source endpoint with the configuration for picking up the content as appropriate, as well as any of its fields. We have our Contentstack destination still, so we're still migrating to the single destination. We have no manipulators for this job, but we will see that we have a mapping for this job. And if we take a look at this mapping, we'll see we have our restaurant content type as set for our destination content type, as well as all of our source fields that we're going to be converting and mapping from our source field, such as data restaurant description, to our destination field to be just description or phone or such. We'll also be setting its field type to either be what it needs to be, such as a string or a select field or a Boolean field. Now, we can take a look at the content that is migrated over using this job, and we will see. We can now see that we have our restaurant content all migrated over, and if we go ahead and open one of those contents, what we can view is the fields that we've now migrated over from a WordPress system using GraphQL as our source. We can see that we have that title as well as the slug or description and even the Boolean and select fields all set appropriately. So this is how ImpulseSync can be used to migrate a variety of content from many different source systems to a single destination system. There is no integration script or other solution that has the success rate or the low cost of ImpulseSync. Thank you for watching.